Good morning, Friendship United Methodist Church. I'd like to welcome you on this 23rd day of March 2025. Really want to welcome you this morning, and I'm glad to see you. I want you to know that. And I'd like to offer a special welcome to all our Joes in the congregation. Now, I'm offering that because March the 27th, this coming Thursday, I believe, is officially National Joe Day. I'm not kidding. It really is, okay? And I don't know who decides these things. I have no idea. Like National Goof Off Day is March the 22nd, and National Waffle Day is March the 25th, but March the 27th is designated as National Joe Day. It's a day for celebrating anyone with the name of Joe. And Strohmeyer, hey Joe, good to see you. And so it's your day. Now, in fact, though, the founder of National Joe Day invites all people to change their name to Joe for this one day, so that everyone can experience the honor of being a Joe. Now, for those of us who have trouble remembering names, National Joe Day is a great idea. I'm just going to call everyone Joe today, and don't be offended if you're a female. I'll call you Jolene, but we're going to shorten it to Joe, okay? But years ago, there was a national survey measuring how well people liked their names. And about 21% of those surveyed said they disliked their names enough to consider changing them. So if you're part of that 21%, hey, this is your day. For this one day, you can be Joe, and you don't have to go through the hassle. We're going to call you Joe today. You're welcome. Okay, yeah. I think it's pretty interesting that our Bible passage for today falls on the Joe Day is the 27th. It falls near National Joe Day. And it's a story of a young man who wanted to make a change in his life. He didn't want to change his name. Instead, he wanted to get away from his family and his hometown and make a new home for himself in a faraway place, even if that meant hurting people he loved the most, even if that meant burning bridges and losing his way, even if that meant ending up in a place he never imagined he would be. Now, it's sort of like 49-year-old man from Germany, Erwin Quetz, who in 1977 spent his life savings for a special trip to the magical city of San Francisco, California. The flight had a short layover in Bangor, Maine, before reaching its destination. And while on the layover, a flight attendant casually wished Quetz a good time in San Francisco. She was unaware that the German passenger didn't speak English, and he heard those two magic words, San Francisco, and assumed that he had reached his vacation destination. So he got off the plane in Bangor, Maine, and began touring the town. He wandered the streets of Bangor for 3 days before he discovered his mistake. And a local family took him in. His story made into the local newspaper, and then a strange thing happened from there. Now, I don't know how he communicated, but it did. And the locals threw Quetz a 50th birthday party. The Penobscot Indian Nation named him an honorary member. A local songwriter wrote a folk song about him. The Bangor government gave him a small parcel of land in northern Maine, and even the governor of Maine visited Erwin Quetz. Within a week, Time magazine published an article about Erwin, And the Today Show did a segment on the lost foreigner who received a hearty welcome in an unexpected place. Now, not to be outdone, the San Francisco Chronicle covered the story and paid for Irwin Quitz's trip to San Francisco, where he rode in a cable car, met the city's mayor, and attended a rodeo where he received a standing ovation. 1 year after his whirlwind trip to the United States, Irwin Quitz returned to Bangor, Maine for a visit with the folks who had put him up there. And according to the local property assessor, he continued to pay taxes on the plot of land there in northern Maine, even though he never came back to America to see it. Wouldn't it be great if every story of being lost had a happy ending? Wouldn't that be great? Wow. Now, a lot of them do. Not all of them, but a lot of them do. But sometimes a trip to a faraway place takes us away from the sense of self, our sense of security, our source of our strength. Sometimes a trip to a faraway place ends in brokenness or loss or regret. A university professor in Australia recruited 657 adults between the ages of 20 and 80 and asked them to discuss the 10 biggest decisions they made in their life so far. Okay? Now, if you were recruited for this story, any of you, man, Joe, you're Joe today, any of you, what would be your 10 biggest life decisions so far? It's fascinating to think about that, isn't it? The professor and the study subjects then sorted out and ranked the decisions according to how often the decisions were mentioned, how significant the decisions were in the course of each person's life, and the emotions connected to those decisions. I think this study is very interesting because of what it says about the decisions we regret. The professor in charge of the study reports the most enduring regrets in their life from decisions that move you further from the ideal person that you want to be. They moved you away from what you wanted to be. Now that makes sense, doesn't it? The most enduring regrets in life result from decisions that move you further from the ideal person that you may want to be. I think it's important to point out that before I jump into our Bible story today, that I think everyone here is aware where it's going, but I think it's important today that we have all made decisions that have moved us further from the ideal person we wanted to be. We all made decisions that have moved us further from the ideal person God made us to be. And that's exactly what sin is, friends. Moving away from God's perfect character and perfect will. Romans 3:23 reads, "For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God." So today's Bible story is good news for all of us. It's about a son who rebels against his family. He asks for his share of the family inheritance so that he can go off to a distant country and start a new life. And the end result is that he squandered his fortune in wild living and ended up broke and alone in a foreign land. When a severe famine spread throughout the whole country, the young man became desperate and hired himself out to a pig farmer just to keep from starving to death. Feeding pigs was rock bottom, the most shameful job a young Jewish man could have. The son in Jesus' story had rejected his father, lost his inheritance, and brought shame on his whole household. According to Old Testament customs, he was worthy of death. This is one of Jesus' most famous stories. But Jesus' stories are never just about the story. There's more to it than that. Every story Jesus told is an introduction to God's heart. If you've ever wanted to know what God is like, then this story is for you, Joe. And if you truly want to understand the nature of God's heart, then always look at who Jesus' audience is. Jesus never told a story just to entertain or instruct. He told stories to draw people closer to God. So he was very careful to choose the right story for the right audience. So our story begins with the words, "Now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, 'This man welcomes sinners and eats with them.'" My goodness gracious, what do you think of that? You could hear muttering under the breath. Paraphrase there. Then Jesus tells them this parable. What do these verses tell us about God's heart? Jesus is telling the audience of outcasts, God welcomes you. God welcomes you. You are important to me. Not as a project or a charity case, but as a friend. And this man welcomes sinners and eats with them. Oh, the scribes and the Pharisees, my goodness, how could he? Paul Tenier, a Swiss physician, counselor, and author who became famous for his books on patient care, Tenier believed that physical, emotional, and spiritual health were interconnected, and he focused on addressing the whole patient in his medical practice. His methods were so effective that doctors came from all over the world to learn from him. Tenier once wrote, "It's a little embarrassing for my students to come over and study my techniques. They always go away disappointed because all I do is accept people." That's interesting, don't you think? All I do is accept people. Those people that you condemn, those people that you think are not worthy, those people that you think don't live the way that you think they should, Christ accepts them and Christ loves them. Friends, there's healing in acceptance. Jesus' interaction with others were remarkably open. He noticed people whom others had overlooked. He touched people who were judged to be untouchable. He had no walls of accountability around them, and this openness caused the local religious leaders to view him with suspicion and contempt. Even today, we struggle to just accept and love people as they are, don't we? This is yes. This is no. Even today, the kind of love that Jesus showed is radical. We reserve our love for certain people, don't we? Don't go there, Pastor Bob. Don't go there. In 1989, Mother Teresa visited Phoenix, Arizona to open a homeless shelter. And there was a huge celebration in the city of Phoenix to welcome her, with crowds packing into the local Veterans Memorial Coliseum to hear her speak. She was also invited to do a radio interview on Phoenix's largest radio station, KTAR. Before the interview, the radio host asked Mother Teresa if there was anything he could do to help her work. He was accustomed to leading his celebrity to various charities and making donations for good causes, but that's not what Mother Teresa wanted from him. Instead, she said, "Yes, there is something you could do for me. Find somebody nobody else loves and love them." Find someone that nobody else loves and love them. That's how Jesus lived his life, friends. He found the people nobody else loved, the people who had been told that God couldn't love them, and he loved them. He made them the center of his attention. He made them the good guys in his stories. That's the whole reason he was telling this story. And let me tell you about a man named Ron Batiste. Batiste, a biker, became a Christian while serving a short stint in prison. When he got out of prison, he couldn't find a church where he felt comfortable. So Batiste started his own church, Covenant Confirmers Ministries. Covenant Confirmers Ministries near Nashville, Tennessee. Covenant's members include former addicts and gang members and prostitutes, and even a local police sergeant. Tommy Hollingsworth, a Covenant member who also spent time in prison, says of the church, "You don't have to clean up. You just get connected to God. You just get connected to God. Anybody is welcome here. Anybody. Just get connected to God." And that was the point of every one of Jesus' stories. That was the point of his life. That's what led him to the cross, just to connect us with God. We're still talking about, keeping our eyes on the prize. Eyes on the prize, God, and it's the eternal gift of heaven. What does this story tell us about God? First and foremost, friends, it tells us that we are welcomed. We are welcomed. And the second thing Jesus is telling his audience of outcasts is God is waiting for you. And Jesus continues with his story. The son in this story is starving and desperate. So he decides to head home and beg for mercy. He knew he had destroyed any chance of rejoining his family. He had destroyed any chance of forgiveness. But he thought to himself, "I'll confess my sin to my father, and I'll ask him to take me on as a hired servant." And if you have ever thought that you are wandered so far from God that you're no longer worthy to be called God's child, then you understand this young man's decision. Then Jesus says, well, while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him, and he ran to his son and threw his arms around him and kissed him. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. The father who had been rejected, the father who had been shamed by his son's actions. That father was standing at the window, waiting and watching for his son to come home. That's how he saw him, a long way off. And the father didn't wait for him to make the long journey to his doorstep. He didn't wait for his son to repent or apologize. He didn't wait to see the red, swollen, tear-filled eyes of the young face now hardened and haggard from the hunger and shame. While the son was still a long way off, the father ran to him, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. Now, one of the reasons that he may have ran was reason. He loved him. He ran for that reason. But also, the son, could have been killed and nothing would have been done about it, because he had dishonored his father, and the penalty was death. But the father loved him and ran to him, put his arms around him, showed the forgiveness and love that he had for him, and to protect him. William Muley tells a story of a 5-year-old boy who made a ceramic dish as a Christmas gift for his parents. And as the boy gathered up his things to go home on the last day of the winter term, the wrapped gift slipped from the boy's hands and hit the floor with a crunch. The boy froze, burst into tears. He had ruined his parents' very special handmade gift. And the father tried to comfort the boy. Don't cry, son, don't cry. It doesn't make any difference. But the mother lifted the boy up into her arms, and she held him close as tears ran down her cheeks too. And when the boy finally calmed down, she picked up the gift and said gently, "Let's pick up the pieces and see what we can make out of what is left." God, friends, is waiting to welcome you home. God is waiting to restore you. No matter how far away you may have gone from God's character and God's will, God is saying through Jesus, let's pick up the pieces and see what we can make out of what is left. And this isn't just a moment of restoration. It's a moment of celebration. Do you hear me? Celebration. Jesus' story ends with these words. The son said to him, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son." But the father said to his servants, "Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine who was dead is alive again. He was lost and he is found." So they began to celebrate. And there's a story of a teenage girl who rebelled against her family, became increasingly estranged from them. One night, the daughter was arrested for drunk driving, and the mother had to pick her up at a local jail. That was one long, silent car ride home. The daughter could only imagine the angry words her mother must have been holding inside her as they drove home. And the next day, the mother presented her daughter with a small gift-wrapped box. And inside was a rock. The daughter rolled her eyes. "That's cute, Mom," said the daughter. "What's it for?" "Read the card," the mother said. And inside the card read, "This rock is more than 200 million years old. That's how long it will take before I give up on you." Friends, God is never giving up on you. You are accepted, regardless of what you've done. You are accepted. You're loved, and you're welcomed, and you are waited for, and you're welcome in Friendship United Methodist Church. Jesus' life and death, the motivation for his death, friends, the motivation for his death is to show us that God would give up everything he has to save us and restore us and bring us home again. Can you trust your life to a God like that? I can. I can. Wow. I pray that today is the day that you commit your life to God and come home to the God who is ready to meet you with open arms. Alice, would you play a special hymn for us as we have an altar call this morning? God bless and amen.